Hello les amis, j'espère que vous avez la patate. Bienvenue dans cette nouvelle vidéo. Aujourd'hui, cette vidéo va être en anglais. C'est la deuxième interview que l'on va faire en anglais sur cette chaîne. N'hésitez pas à laisser un like, un commentaire et à partager cette vidéo si elle vous intéresse. Aujourd'hui, on rencontre David Passiak. Hello David.
Hello.
David, aujourd'hui, David has spoke today at a big event here, Elevating Purpose Summit 2017 in Bangkok, and I've asked David if he wanted to make a little interview with us to share you fucking great insight about marketing, about description, about everything actually. It was a great talk. I was really inspired. Thank David for that, and I think it was an obligation to me to share that with you guys. So we are starting our little script and our little questions about entrepreneurship, and to let David share that with you. So David, in a few words, who are you? What do you do? Tell us everything.
So hi, my name is David Passiak. I've written 3 books. My most recent book was called Empower: How to Co-Create the Future. I've also written a book called Disruption Revolution and Red Bull to Buddha.
That name is really fun. Why Red Bull to Buddha?
Well, so about it's been almost 10 years now. I quit my job. I was running an agency in New York City, social media agency. I led social media for Volkswagen. I was working with a lot of big Fortune 500 big companies. But I hated it. I hated doing all of these things, just trying to sell a bunch of products that maybe people didn't want or need. And so I made a decision. I was going to quit my job and kind of really focus on finding my purpose. So I did PhD studies in religion and culture at Princeton before I got into doing community building and stuff for different brands. And so I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand. And I was traveling around Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai means walled city. So Chiang Mai is the second largest city in Thailand, and it's in the north. And basically, going back in history, the Thais and the Burmese used to always fight over Chiang Mai. And every time one empire conquered it, they would build another temple, and then another temple, and then another temple. And so Chiang Mai is kind of like this living museum of Buddhist architecture. There's all these amazing temples going back for like 1,000 years. So I was walking around Chiang Mai, and I went into one of these temples, and I saw all of these glasses that were being put out that were filled with little bottles of Red Bull. And I thought, oh, this is so interesting. I'm in a temple, right? I'm in a Buddhist temple. I'm in this like place of serenity and peace and mindfulness and meditation, and here are all these bottles of Red Bull. Yeah. I thought, oh, how interesting. These bottles of Red Bull are being put out for the Buddha. And so when I started thinking about this in the book, I go through all these different thought experiments. Where could they come from? What does this mean? But of course, in Buddhism in Thailand, there's this tradition of giving donations or offerings to the Buddha. So people will give fruit, they will give different type of baskets, and so in that context, you offer this donation to the Buddha, and in that context, it makes sense. As a Westerner, I think of Red Bull as like nightlife, fast pace, go 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 go, right? And so in the book, it becomes this whole story about how objects change their meaning in different contexts, right? And it also becomes a metaphor from going from fast-paced New York City to traveling through Southeast Asia and India. And so there's all these different layers of the story. So then I started telling my friends this story, and they said, oh, why don't you just call your book Red Bull to Buddha? That's a great kind of catchy title. So
yeah, actually, it's a fucking great idea. David, how do you start your entrepreneurship journey? How do you start your first company, and why did you start to be an entrepreneur?
Well, so I think from my perspective, a lot of people do entrepreneurship for a lot of different reasons. And so I think for entrepreneurs, the key thing is to find, one, what are you passionate about? But also, what are you really good at and what do you like to do on a daily basis? So, for example, someone might really love cars, but actually they are terrible at designing, and they don't like selling, and they don't like, and so maybe there's actually a lot of these things associated with what they're passionate about, actually they don't want to do. And so I feel like with this idea of purpose, you need to think about what is your vision, what do you really want to do, what are you most passionate about, but then also how does that connect to something that you are really good at? Because ultimately it's going from the vision to the execution that makes a successful company. So with myself, part of the reason why I've focused on writing and speaking and giving workshops and stuff like that is because I'm very passionate and very good at doing research and understanding strategy and this big picture, but then I'm also very good at actually teaching and breaking down things and explaining in a way that people can understand. And so for me, I've taken the perspective of thinking of my personal brand as kind of like my own kind of entrepreneurship project, if that makes sense.
Okay, what was your first project? How do you start it?
So actually the first business that I started, so I moved to New York City in 2004, and at the time I was a PhD student at Princeton, and I got really kind of burned out. I was studying religion and culture, and my first week of my graduate studies, 9/11 happened. So imagine studying religion, being an outside of the U.S., outside of New York City 1 hour, and that happened. And so I started to become kind of like, I don't want to be in this ivory tower setting. I want to do something in the real world. So I moved to New York City. And I'd always been a very passionate record collector. So I was a DJ. I did events for a number of years. I had about maybe 2,000 records in my collection. And so there was this guy that I used to buy records from every week at this market called Artisan Fleas in Brooklyn. And so he was leaving on vacation one day. And so I said, well, can I take over your table at the market? Basically, he got a free booth in this very high traffic market in exchange for being the DJ for the market. So in one day, I brought all my records that I didn't want anymore, and in one day I made more money than I did during my day job for a week. So I took all of that money, I bought another collection, then I bought another one, then another one. I built my business up to about 15,000 records. Combination, I expanded to have basically 6 tables in the market, and then I had an online store, and I started doing that, the online record sales full time.
Nice.
From that, I started meeting all these event producers and got into I did about 100 electronic music events in New York City. So at that point, and then from that, I led to the guy that actually used to print my flyers. We had this idea of doing these local neighborhood maps for Brooklyn with listings on the front and advertising on the back. So within about a year, I basically started, just from kind of following my passion, I started 3 different businesses. Actually kind of 4. I started a retail business, started an online store, started an event production company, and I started this maps business. And at that point, I decided that I was not going to go back and finish my PhD.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Fucking awesome. And okay, you just, you were a customer, you took an opportunity, and you start to grow that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, ultimately, there was this passion, like, my business started because I was passionate about music, right? And so in this case, I was meeting record collectors, they were passionate, I built this connection with them. Then if, let's say you were interested in hip-hop, I would take your email down, and every time I bought a hip-hop collection, I would email you. And so there was this way in which I built a successful business around relationships, around personal connections, around fulfilling a specialized need. And then, of course, by giving people a very good price around that. And looking back, you know, I had never studied business. I was always an academic. I looked about the big picture. I liked to do research. All of that just kind of came from my intuition. And then it was from building email lists and MySpace pages for my events and all this stuff. That's what got me into, I kind of taught myself how to do marketing. Eventually I decided, okay, I actually don't want to sell records and do events for the rest of my life. This was kind of interesting. I realized that I did not have the skill sets that I needed to scale. This was, 2005. This was before a big wave of interest in entrepreneurship. This was before really social media was getting very popular. So I decided I need to learn a little bit more, and so I basically sold all my records and then got into building communities for brands.
Great. Fucking great.
Yeah.
With your experiences now, if you need to start up a new business tomorrow, what would be the 3-4 steps you are going to do immediately when you start? Your plan, your classic plan to start a new business.
So my last 2 books, Empower and Disruption Revolution, are both based around this 4-part model. And so the basic idea is that I have a kind of 4-part framework for how to innovate, how to scale any type of business. And so the first thing is this idea that you need to think about any type of organization like you are building a movement. And so your whole organization exists to serve the needs of other people. In the case of the record business, I was successful because I got the records that people wanted. I served their need, right? They needed those things. They came to me to buy them. So there's this idea that you have to do your research and your trends so that you understand who is your audience, what do they need, what is most important to them, who are the ideal partners and people that you should collaborate with. A lot of people have this sense that you say, okay, we have to start with why, and we think of purpose in terms of like coming from within. I actually think that your purpose is fulfilled through meeting the needs of others. It's fulfilled by serving. And so the best way that you serve the needs of others is by understanding what they want and need. So you start with this research and trends part. That's kind of the first step. The second step is that when the world is constantly changing, when there's innovation faster and faster and faster, and it's impossible to keep up, and there's so many things going on, you have to understand what are your core values, your mission, your purpose. What are the things that are not going to change in the next 5 to 10 years? It's your mission, your purpose, your values. Those are the things that attract people that want to work with you. Those are also the things that attract loyalty and retention in your customers. Yeah. If you have good employees and you have loyal customers, that's what drives growth. So then you go from this research and trends. Then step 2 is the core values, mission, purpose. Step 3 is looking really at your operations, your teams. So how do you actually collaborate and communicate on a daily basis? How do you communicate and build your team internally? Also, how can you think of your customers as being part of your team? So, for example, asking them questions. What type of products do you want? Asking them to refer their friends, and so on and so forth. And then the last part is what I call scalable storytelling. Yeah. So a lot of people think of marketing as like, I just sort of push this message out into the world so I can get people to buy my stuff. Actually, marketing is really about telling a story that resonates, that hits you in the heart, that understands and communicates to your customers, so that those people will want to buy your products, they will want to share your products. And this idea of scalable storytelling is that you have a story that can scale on different platforms. So, for example, this video is going to be on YouTube, right? So you are telling stories in the form of video. If you're on something like Twitter, you are telling stories in the form of 140 characters, right? If you're on Facebook, you are telling it with, maybe faster videos. Long-form video doesn't really work on Facebook. Yeah. You're doing infographics, right? Yeah, so this idea of scalable storytelling is if you have, like, you want to think about this in a big picture. Like, if you've done your research, you have your vision, you understand who your audience is and why you're working with them, then you have your story, and you tell the story based upon where your audiences are.
Great. I think it's a great plan to start up a new business today. Many things we have already here in videos on that channel and from many other entrepreneurs we met. And you know that start with the community, start with the clients. You wanna sell things. Start with the clients, start with the prospects. They are the sources of, they are the information. They know what they want and they know how much they want to pay and everything. What are the skills you have developed from all those years? The really important skills, what are they?
Well, I think it all comes back to telling stories.
Yeah.
I think that if entrepreneurs are raising money, they are telling a story to investors. If they are selling a product, they are telling stories to their customers. There's also this whole kind of journey that you go through. So, for example, there's what I would call a deeper level of storytelling. So, for example, you go from getting excited about a video online to telling a deeper story on your website, and then maybe you will sign up for an email newsletter or something, and then you will get a series of more stories, or you will join a webinar or something like that. So I think that I think about this idea of storytelling and vision and really having a service-oriented mindset is the thing that translates as a skill set, is the thing that translates into any business. And then related to stories is the idea of building relationships. Relationships and networking and trust are the most important thing. Because I think when the world is changing faster and faster and faster and faster, it means that the only things that are not changing are our reputation, our relationships with other people, right? Yeah. And so there's this paradox where as innovation happens faster and faster and faster, relationships become even more and more and more important.
We need to go back to the basics.
We'll go back to the basics, yeah. Exactly.
Great. So storytelling, how to build trust and confidence, right, with peoples and relationships.
Yeah, and then I would also say that being honest and open in communication is also incredibly important, and having a culture of trust and respect and collaboration among your peers. Because the other really key thing around building a successful company is that when you're doing anything that's new, you are always going to fail. You're always going to have something that goes wrong. There's always a constant process of testing and refinement. And so the traditional mindset is that I'm going to build this product and it has to succeed. Yeah. If it doesn't succeed, I have to blame someone else. It's someone's fault. And actually, if you create this culture of trust and collaboration, then you look at that as a learning opportunity. If you learn from your mistakes, you're able to iterate and innovate faster and faster and faster. And so there's this whole kind of mindset that goes along with that. And then, of course, all of this goes back to the basic idea of understanding someone's needs, understanding what they want. You know, I think of when I go back to my first business, the record business, for example, the reason why I was very successful was because I was like the target customer. I understood what people wanted, I understood what they needed, and I built that instant connection with them, and that was the thing that led to my customers being loyal and coming back.
High level of empathy, right?
Yes, exactly.
If you are not an entrepreneur, what could you do? What could you do?
Well, so I mean, I think there's this kind of this cult of the entrepreneur that I actually think is very. It gets people excited about innovation, but I actually think not everyone should want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship requires taking a lot of risks. It requires doing things that can have a lot of personal toll. It's not necessarily the best thing for people that have families, or people who care about financial security, who care about a number of different things. And I actually think that maybe only a small percentage of people in the total population, I think, really have the mindset and the resources and the dedication to follow through with entrepreneurship. And I think without good team members, every entrepreneur would fail. So I actually think that if there's too much of a focus on entrepreneurship, we actually lose sight of the fact that we need good team members.
Yeah.
And so when I think of, this goes back to building a culture of innovation, when I think what any person should do, you should be constantly giving. You should be constantly having a service-oriented mindset. When you are giving and you are open and helping others, those people naturally want to help you back. It creates this cycle of goodwill. It means that people keep coming back to you, especially when we are entering an era where basically people are working on demand, where there are no longer really full-time jobs.
Yeah.
If you are doing good things, people will refer you work. So actually there's a way in which if you are constantly giving, you will actually lead you to be more successful, to get more better work. And if you are reliable and follow through and do good work, that means you will get better referrals, and you will also be able to have to command a better rate to make more money.
Totally okay with that. Do you think we born entrepreneur or we became an entrepreneur? You have already answered a little bit about that, but I need to ask the question. It's a little philosophical, you know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a parent. I talk to my friends who are parents, and they tell me that their kids have their personality. Like right when they're born, they can see that people are acting different ways. Mm-hmm. Some people are very curious. Some people are very ambitious and bold. Some people are more shy or whatever. Yeah. So I think there's a certain kind of sense of that. There's a certain level of kind of curiosity versus being more stable and reserved that I think we're all kind of born with. I also think that one of the beautiful things about humanity is that we are evenly distributed. So not everyone like me is like a crazy risk taker who always wants to do innovation and, travel to 50-something countries, and I keep doing these new things. That's what I'm most passionate about. It's kind of how I've always been. I've always been like trying to like do the next big thing, understand the next big thing. Mm-hmm. That tends to scare a lot of people, though. And I think not everyone should try and be like me, just as not like everyone should try and be the opposite way. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think that I think the key thing for everyone is to be really honest with yourself. So there's this sense that like I have to kind of compare myself to other people. Like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur, so I have to compare myself to Elon Musk, or I have to compare myself to Steve Jobs, or whoever. And as soon as you start comparing yourself to other people, you start feeling inadequate. You feel like you're not good enough.
You're losing your point of view.
You're losing your point of view, yeah. So there's this balance between trying to emulate, to try and do the things and look up to people as heroes or mentors and follow their advice. But there's also, you have to kind of find your own unique calling, your own unique path. And it's this balance between the two that I think is the delicate part of the entrepreneurship journey.
Great. Actually, are you happy today? Are you an happy entrepreneur?
Yeah, I am. It's interesting. After I've traveled to around 50 countries and written all these books and all this stuff, and I've started to see, for me, what I'm working on now is launching an agency marketing blockchain companies and ICOs. So for the past 20 years, I've been passionate about a more open world, transparency, value sharing, community building, all these types of things. Plus, I've been passionate about innovation and the future.
Yeah, the blockchain is the answer.
Yeah, and for me, the blockchain is the answer, and the ICOs are the vehicle to accelerate that change. And so what we are doing now is we're focusing on marketing ICOs, because blockchain companies tend to be developed by developers that have this very technical oriented mindset, and so they don't understand how to build how to create a story, how to build community, these types of things. So we are providing this kind of value-added service and need. And then we made a decision that we only work with companies that have a positive social impact upon the world. And we take 50% of our compensation, our fees, in the tokens of our clients. And that makes sure that we only work with companies that we believe in for the long term.
Great. What would you say if you can take the car of Doc and Marty from Back to the Future and go back in 2004? What could you say? What would you say to David? 2004, maybe?
2004.
You started your record business, right?
Yeah.
2004. What would you do? What would you say to David?
It's an interesting question, because that was a time when I never thought about being an entrepreneur. I actually didn't really think at the time that I was starting a business. I was just following my heart, and at the time it was like I was just kind of experimenting and doing something before I went back to school. And so if I was to go back, I would tell myself that actually this is your true calling, that actually you were not, I had this whole journey as an academic, and I learned so much stuff about building movements, and the next step was to then go on and actually do that for other people and other brands and companies. And if following this path would allow me to have a better impact upon the world than I ever could as an academic. So if I was to go back and talk to myself then, I would kind of give confidence and reinforcement, because at the time it was it was exciting, but it was also kind of scary, because I didn't really know where I was going. I also think this whole cult of the entrepreneur, like startup thing, was not very big in 2004, because the dot-com crash happened at the end of 2000. Yeah. And so there was actually not a lot of interest in entrepreneurship and social media, and so I would have told myself about that.
Okay, great. Do you have resources of an advice for the people who are looking at us right now and they want to start their company, or maybe they want to grow their company? One resources, one advice, the last word of that video.
Well, so I mentioned my books, Empower and Disruption Revolution, and in the spirit of co-creation and collaboration and sharing, I made the entire 300-plus page books available by donation, because in my opinion, a book is kind of like a new business card. It's a new way of just kind of being out there. I never intended to make money. I felt that by adding value and contributing to the entrepreneurship community, that would come back to me. And it has, in the form of getting clients and workshops and talks, and enabling me to have this life traveling all over the world. And so my first piece of advice would be to actually go and download my books. If you want to support my work, you can make a donation, but that is optional. And so I would suggest starting with there. The other thing that I would say is that whether you are an entrepreneur or whether you are someone that wants to work for companies, you just have to make something. And so a lot of times people, they get so caught up in the business plan, they get so caught up in the strategy, they don't know how to get started. A lot of times when people graduate college, all that they have is a resume, and the resume looks like everyone else's resume. And so if you're a writer, start a blog. If you're passionate about design, start designing things and create a Tumblr or a blog or Medium account. If you're a developer, create an app and get it in the App Store. Do something. It doesn't really matter what it is, because you're going to learn from that experience. You're going to feel a sense of confidence that you've actually achieved something. And then if you want to go get investors, or if you want to go get a job, you can show someone something that you've created. And it's a lot better than looking at a resume. I can go, oh, wow, that's a really cool app. That's a really cool blog. That's a really cool design. I can tell that you are someone that I want to work with. So that would be my advice.
Fucking great. I like it. Thank you. Thanks a lot, David.
Thank you so much,
for
everyone.
sharing all that insight. I really like your mindset, and it's really a pleasure to have you here to share with the community. Guys, you have all the insights now to start or to grow your business. Thank you again, David, for your time. Leave comments right there, like, share the video with your friends, with your buddies who they want to grow or start their businesses. Thank you, guys. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.